Hello and welcome to Art Show. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Rick Salafia. Hey, Rick, how are you?
Good, Craig. Thank you.
I am very excited for today because when I saw your work online, um, many of your work had me doubling over in laughter. I just found the whimsy, the humor in your work so enjoyable. I went, a lot of times I have to do research and I find some pieces that are great, but I literally went through everything on your website because I was having such a great time looking at it. So I wanted to start with this piece because I think this was one of the first pieces I saw. And you have a whole series of these, what do you call them?
The official title is instruments because I like the multiple definitions of that word.
Mm-hmm.
But informally, I think of them as rulers.
Mm-hmm. I
They're
saw
all
them, and not only is it a great idea, right? So that you can have these ideas, but the idea that you actually executed them and you make additions of them, the commitment is just wonderful to see. And you have all kinds of shapes and sizes of these, and it was just wonderful. Did the idea of this sort of did it evolve or did it hit you like a thunderclap? How did they come about?
what I recall is that I was in a hardware store and was kind of wandering around and I came across some uh, strips of aluminum, like about 3 feet long, but 1 inch wide, and they reminded me of rulers. They sort of look like big rulers. In my experience, cheap rulers are usually made out of aluminum, not steel. Better rulers are made out of, hardier material. And since they were just raw pieces of aluminum, I had the thought that I started thinking about the sort of standard ruler, and I thought, I wonder if I could make a ruler without a ruler.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my studio, I marked off what I thought was 12 inches and then the increments in between. Yes, these are the
Yeah, I
first
want it. So
12.
these came first.
They did.
Okay. That to me, it was so funny to think about the idea that you're kind of guessing at the amount and then making them, and then you would addition these, right? Aren't they like in a set of three or something?
These are called estimations, and these are not addition. They're just
Oh, okay.
one of a kind, and there's 12 of them. I gave myself 12 attempts because of the 12 inches. And since you began by talking about humor, it reminds me of something the playwright Tom Stoppard said, which is laughter is the sound of comprehension. And I think there's a close relationship between the experience of understanding something, getting it, and having that all kind of intersect,
Hmm.
and ex- that sort of explosion of laughter, which is a physical response.
Hmm.
So I'm pretty I'm pretty comfortable with works that make people laugh or find humorous or witty because it tells me that they quote get it.
Yeah, it's rare that I come across fine art that has whimsy and humor in it. And it made what I liked about your work is it made me take the extra step in thinking not only about the objects, but what those objects mean or what they're actually for. So when I saw this, it made me think, is this for, this could be for a very specific project that you need a device like this. It's always the right tool for the right job. Or maybe this is a ruler from parallel dimension, or, I just started hopping off on all the different ideas that where this could come. So I encourage everybody to go to Rick's website and see the wild number of shapes and sizes of these rulers because I just think they're fantastic. Oh, here's another one that was quite interesting, and I was trying to figure out the project that would be needed for something like this. I really loved it. So
And
I
that's,
wanted to move on. Sorry
mhm.
about the quickness. I wanted to show a breadth of your works because you have your ideas are just they're so plentiful. I mean, most artists don't think they have plentiful ideas, but you do. And it just they really kind of they got to me. So I wanted to show this one because I can imagine this must have some form of wonderful presence when you're in it. This gigantic shape, this form of umbrellas. What is it about this that I'm looking
Um, First of all, I think that uh, I appreciate that you observe that I have a lot of ideas. That I find that to be um, a compliment.
at? It is.
But my first thought was I really only have like two ideas,
Yeah.
and I keep iterating on those two ideas. I'm not exactly sure what they are, but they feel
Uh-huh.
the same. When I make a what I feel like is a successful piece or other people respond to, I feel like, oh yeah, I've done this before. And this piece is the iteration of making a single form out of multiples, which lots of artists. I mean, I have a debt of gratitude for Donald Lipsky, who, when I was young, I saw his work, and he's a master of putting together asymmetrical things into symmetrical forms. So this is made out of umbrellas because I was thinking about uh, the environmental impact of climate change and the weather. Even though this is probably from the early 90s, so it's quite old, and climate change wasn't. We sort of thought about things like acid rain and pollution in the environment, and that language has changed over the years. But I just envisioned, if we all have to protect ourselves from whatever is out there, we're all going to pop up umbrellas. And so I think of this as a globe.
Well, again, it was the humor this time in the titles that I chose this piece because I think your series title is Logical Conclusions.
Yes.
Yeah, so that made sense, and that also made me laugh about it. And I completely understand about the two or three good ideas. I always think of there's a famous de Kooning quote where he said artists are lucky if they have two or three good ideas in their entire lifetime. And
Right.
I always think about that going, yeah, I've had about two. Maybe I can have one more.
Yeah.
But and I also I wanted to show this piece. I was in the car with my wife the other day, and we were talking about you because I said, who I have coming up, and I described this piece to her, and she loved it. She's on board. She was like, "Yes, interview him. That sounds absolutely wonderful." So I like this piece because not only is it an interesting shape, but you're picking up on, I guess it's the myth of the sound of seashells. I don't know what you call that.
Yeah. And this is one of those pieces that's conceptual in its formation because it could be described without looking at it. You could
Mm-hmm.
just say, what if I made a
Right.
pair of headphones and it replaced the speakers with seashells, and you could just constantly listen to the ocean as you go about your day. Um, so it's a kind of what if piece, and making it was just a matter of putting it together because the design was already in my head. And
Right.
and I consider myself a conceptual artist, John Baldessari, um, Charles Ray, etc. But I'm interested in writers uh, like Annie Dillard, um, especially Lydia Davis and her short stories that really kind of tear apart the form of the story. They're always thinking about the way we think about things. And so, Lydia Davis is somebody who can tear apart the short story, reconstruct it in such a way that you never forget it's about
Mhm.
writing. You never forget it's about storytelling and the way that the writer is putting it together. And, I think the studio is a place where I have the stuff I need.
Mhm.
My best thinking happens when I'm not in the studio, when I'm
So
out.
I gotta ask, did you have the shells, or did you think of the idea and you had to go find the right shell?
I remember going, there was a shell, there was a store
Uh-huh.
that I found in New Jersey
Uh-huh.
that sold um, sort of crafty shell things.
Seashell
And
Museum. Hmm.
yeah, exactly. And the challenge was to find two shells that were quite similar.
Okay. And then you found them and it was Eureka. I
That
can make
there it is, and
these.
I was done in an hour.
That's great. So you do a wide variety of disciplines. So I was thrilled to see the sculptural work. And then there's this photography series. I mean, you also do collage, and I think I saw there's a painting and a few others. So this series where you what did you call it? Adjusting with the camera. I think that
This
was,
is called fixing things with my camera.
yeah. And it meant, again, the humor in the work, the idea that that's called that, loved it. And so I wanted to show this, not only this piece, and I love the idea that you have a frame specially built. You've taken the extra step to make it kind of wonky that I really enjoy. And you did that for the whole series as well. Um, this is great. How did these come about?
It's an observation. I've always noticed that there's a tremendous amount of things in the world that are supposed to be um, level or plumb.
Hmm.
They're intended to be vertical or horizontal. And it seems to me that most half of them are not exactly right. There's
Hmm.
something about the world that pushes them off of vertical, but we compensate for that. We understand that weather, earth movement, accidents, etc., um, gravity impact on the things around us. And so I wanted to draw attention to um, the mistake, the error, and the way that we compensate and don't notice, um, or assign it to something that's random
Hmm.
or somehow out of our control. So once I started finding these things and photographing them by tilting the camera and making the um, out of plumb or out of level thing actually level,
Hmm.
I saw more and more of them. So
I
there's
can imagine you might, like, as soon as you go out of the house, you see like everything in that
there's
perspective.
there's hundreds of them, and hundreds of these photographs. So it's a very long series.
Do you are these one-offs or do you edition these?
These are one off, but because they're photographs, there's always the potential for making multiples. I guess I reserve the right to, um, one of the reasons I've got over just under right now, and I'm continuing on these rulers, these instruments. I'm almost at 300.
Okay.
And I realized when I was first making them, like all artists, you sort of think, well, usually it happens when you're in a show and the gallery wants you to assign a value,
Right.
which is always a kind of magic trick. Is this is do I have previous sales that
Right.
can show evidence of, et cetera, et cetera? And I thought, well, these are quite saleable, and I think people are going to like these. These are small, they're easy to mount on the wall.
Yeah.
Um, I might sell some of these, which is another rare thing that happens. I have two ideas and four sales.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's every artist.
Yeah.
Well,
um,
speaking of edition,
yes.
I want to show one final artwork of yours. Um, your month of Sundays. So you have this listed as a collage. But if you're going to edition anything, I would love to see this as a small edition. I can imagine every year you coming out with a brand new, Rick's 2024 calendar, and it's just this. And then each year you update the calendar. It's just a wonderful idea. Is this an actual collage, or is this put together through computer?
If you take a year's calendar and cut the
Mm,
days out vertically, they fall into a sequence.
okay.
And so this is one year, and I took each month, and Sundays were in red.
Mm,
The other days of the week were in black. So I cut them vertically, and so there's 7 months there, and they're in sequence. Probably this is January, February, whatever, wherever Sunday started on the first of
mm,
the month. So if it was June, then this is June, July, August, September, etc. And it's just the nature of the way the calendar is, which I hadn't noticed until I don't know, I was looking at stuff,
mm,
looking at something at a calendar and notice something. And then I think the artists, the difference between people have art ideas all the time.
yeah.
And it's just a matter of following through, which is first you have to realize, oh, this is worth doing.
Right. Right.
And then, John Baldessari's pencil story, the two photographs of the dull pencil and the sharpened
Hmm.
pencil, the text below it that says, this dull pencil always bothered me. And I wanted to sharpen it, but I didn't. And
Uh-huh.
and I'm paraphrasing here.
Yeah.
And then finally one day I did sharpen it. I'm not sure, but I think this has something to do with art. And that encapsulates the story
Uh-huh.
of my artistic development. Things bother me.
Uh-huh.
I kind of want to do something. Finally, I do. And then I think, well, maybe this is art. Maybe this is worth doing. Maybe this is worth having or thinking about.
Well,
So
you have my vote for that being art. So I would love to see that. So I have a bunch of questions for you, but some questions I repeat when I ask artists just because I want to hear the answer. This is a question I do ask other artists. Do you remember if you have a first memory, a first exposure to art, something that really sticks in your head when you were a kid?
in Catholic school in second grade, um, for some reason or another, a nun allowed me to copy the artworks out of a kid's book of biblical stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to me fairly straightforward. I could copy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was immediately recognized as a talent by the adults around me. And so I was assigned the role of the the school artist. And I didn't really know anything. I thought art was about creating beauty,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed to come easily to me. And I was looking for something that I wanted to do. Um, and then later, I kind of gave it up. I didn't really follow that as an identity. I kind of wanted to be a professional Boy Scout
Mm-hmm.
uh, and live in the woods.
Right.
Uh, but then I got to college and sat down with my advisor who said, well, if you want to be an environmental science major, these are the chemistry,
Mm-hmm.
biology, and math courses you have to take. And I said, how about art? Can I major in art?
All right, that makes sense. So at what point then did you decide to become an artist? Because that does, being in art school doesn't mean you're going to be an artist.
Yeah, in those days, they didn't teach you anything about what we call now the business of art,
They
how to
still
get a
don't.
grant, because the sensibility was by my faculty in college. I figured it out. I'm not just going to tell you. This is close held information. It was almost like an apprentice system.
Yeah.
So now art students can take all kinds of courses in what to do after college. Um, So I started out kind of going, oh, this is interesting. It's a challenge. It's kind of a blank slate. Let's see if I can do it. And at a certain point, you know, it's too late to change. I mean, I've done a lot of different jobs, as most artists have, and I could tell that most of those jobs were things I didn't want to do all day.
Hmm.
So teaching, making art, trying to sell it, trying to exhibit it is a really wonderful way to spend your life. And I think I'm lucky that I avoided environmental science and
That's good.
somehow got into an art department where people took it seriously and said,
Yeah,
no, this is a profession. You can do this.
right. Well, when I first saw your work, as a painter, I immediately started thinking about your processes and it's specifically your thought processes. So I'm kind of curious to know, do you keep a sketchbook? Like when you get ideas, do you write them down or do you just keep them in your head? Or or do you just work and just start working?
I do a little bit of both. Um, I'm a believer in the iteration process at the beginning. I don't think my ideas don't come fully completely formed. Occasionally they do, and it's like I said with the seashell headphones, it's just a matter of executing it. Um, I'm a believer in the idea that if you want to have a good idea, you have to have lots of ideas. So by
Hmm.
definition, many of them are failures. Now, I prefer to fail on paper rather than with materials. Um, but paper also allows me to think about, a sculpture in multiple different materials. Now,
Hmm.
occasionally I'll run into a material that a sculpture needs to be made out of that I've never worked with before. And I
Hmm.
have to learn to engrave aluminum. I've never done printmaking or etching, so I don't know how to engrave. So I've had to teach myself how to do that. And then I learned to do it pretty well,
Hmm.
but that's not useful anymore because I don't work with one too.
So when you're gonna make something new, you go into the studio, you just completed something, and you know that you're gonna do something new, but you don't yet have your ideas. Do
Right.
you have processes or formulas or things that you do that spark your creativity? Like, do you read beforehand, or do you take a walk, or is having a sandwich? Like, what is it that gets you going?
My studio is 37 steps from my house.
Okay.
So, um, and another thing I think is interesting that somebody said about being an artist is it's a job. You go to work. A friend of mine, uh, the painter David Lefkowitz, I went to his house one day to have coffee, and on his refrigerator was a post-it. And on the post-it was a hierarchical chart of responsibilities, sort of like what they do in corporations. At the top is the CEO, and below the CEO is the CFO, and et cetera, et cetera. And he had a little hand drawn hierarchical chart like that, and in each box it just said me,
Hmm. Yeah, right.
because you got to learn to do everything, and
Everything. It's
you got
true.
to be the conceptualizer, you got to be the designer, you got to be the chief financial officer, you got to spackle the holes in the gallery before you hang your work up. You got to learn to do it. So there's a lot of jobs you have to do. No one job is really difficult. The difficult one is how to build a creative practice, that you're referring to. What is the practice? Like a doctor has a practice or a lawyer has a practice. What is the practice of being creative? And I think I'm still not sure exactly what my practice is, but I do
Okay.
know I have to go clean the studio.
Right, right, exactly. You know, I completely agree with you 100%. You know, being autodidactic does help
That's
because
right.
there are so many things that you have to do, marketing, PR, computers, and just it's overwhelming. Um, so I wanted to ask, because we're starting to run out of time. You had something that you told me that you wanted to read, that I want to put this into the record. So could you go ahead with that?
Yeah, so sometimes because I work with multiple materials, sometimes text is the most efficient way. Words are the most efficient way of getting an idea across. So when this idea first came to me, I thought, well, how can I make, what kind of sculpture, photograph, or video can I make? I couldn't come up with anything. So I just decided to write it. So
But
this
the
is
words are good. Okay.
words I think work. So this is a piece called No Matter What a Tool is Meant For, it can always be used as a hammer. The radio is on, the television is on, the blender is on, the grass clipper is on, the guitar is on, the light is on, the camera is on, the saw is on, the coffee is on, the sink is on, the pool is on, the heat is on, the knife is on, the toothbrush is on, the scale is on, the vacuum is on, the hair dryer is on, the clock is on, the sign is on, the phone is on, the air is on, the water is on, the iron is on, the refrigerator is on, the fountain is on, the speaker is on, the crock pot is on, the sander is on, the piano is on, the movie is on, the song is on, the hot water heater is on, the kettle is on, the blanket is on, the timer is on, the toaster is on, the fence is on, the lighter is on, the pencil sharpener is on, the dryer is on, the washer is on, the meter is on, the alarm is on, the hose is on, the food processor is on, the can opener is on, the humidifier is on, the dehumidifier is on, the pressure is on.
I understand exactly what you mean. Like sometimes the wording is the art itself. It doesn't need an actual thing. So that was fantastic. Thank you, Rick.
Thank
Well,
you.
unfortunately, we're out of time. Rick, I can't thank you enough for coming by and talking with me today about your work. Uh, Again, anybody who goes to Rick's website, check it all out because each one is a sort of, so there's a new surprise waiting for you with each page. So again, Rick, thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch Art Show today. We really enjoy your support. Of course, we love it if you like and subscribe. That really helps push Art Show forward. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section. We want to hear from you what you think about Rick's work and Art Show. So thank you for watching. And again, Rick, thanks for showing up. I appreciate your time today.
Greg, you're really good at what you do.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.